Welcome to For Good Measure, an interview series celebrating diverse composers and other creative artists. I'm Nanette McGuinness, Artistic Executive Director of Ensemble for these times. In this week's episode, we continue our Da Capo Conversations, a mini-series where we'll be giving familiar segments a topical twist. Today we revisit Stephanie M. Neumann's and Rajna Swaminathan's advice for young or emerging composers and artists. Here's what Stephanie M. Neumann had to say.
I think the advice that I wanted to give myself when I was a young musician is that it's okay to not be perfect. No one is perfect, and you hear that and you're like, yeah. But
But it's really true.
but it is true. And there are situations, unfortunately, which I talked about how the competitiveness, and there are some really intense directors and I see some negative influences in music that probably stunted my relationship when that was happening. And so that's not all music is, and it's not what it should be about. And then also just there's so many different types of music. Just because you're not really interested in one, there might be something else you really like or get interested in. And I know that I've seen people who get frustrated, but maybe giving other options in music, like maybe the free improvisation to some younger kids who are just stuck in trying to be perfect. Maybe that could be for them too.
It really seems like for you, improvisation acted as an antidote to the stifling effect of perfectionism on your creativity and success, and that when you had that in your tool chest, all of a sudden the world's open up to you again.
Yeah, and now when I am playing classical music, I think I'm just less hard on myself for sure. I mean, yes, getting older helps with that too.
Here's what Rajna Swaminathan had to say.
I think my one piece of advice, which is something I've learned over time, is to not force it. I think the more that you try to force something to happen, the less likely it is to happen in a meaningful way. And I think there's ways that, I've learned from my collaborators that just living your life and paying attention to things just in your lived experience and noticing how they manifest in your creative work can be a way of orienting it towards that. It doesn't have to be like a one-to-one relationship where you can clearly, explain what is what in a piece. And I find myself in this situation always because people do want me to explain my work or justify it or say why, and I'm not saying that your questions are doing this. In fact, I think if anything, your questions are allowing me to say exactly why I don't think that needs to happen. Because we're always in flux, and what I say to you today is going to be different if we speak like a year or two from now.
Absolutely.
So I don't see the purpose of fixing it. I don't see any purpose in saying, well, this is the Indian part of my work and this is the Western part of my work, because even those categories are in flux, and have informed each other over the years, over the centuries, I should say. And so I think my advice in general, maybe this is obviously probably pertinent for young female and queer composers, but to any composer, I'd say who's trying to deal with their identity, is to allow it to come forward in ways that maybe you don't understand yet. And maybe you'll listen back a couple of years from now and it'll make sense in a different way. And to allow that depth to come through. There's this Martinican poet, philosopher, whose work I really enjoy, Edouard Glissant. And he talks about it as the right to opacity, because there are all these colonial frameworks that make us feel like we need to be intelligible to what is usually defined as a kind of white gaze or like a white framework.
Right.
And or a kind of framework that wants to taxonomize. And his whole point is, well, actually, maybe lean into your right to not be intelligible, lean into your right to be mysterious, and to maybe not even have those things clearly defined for yourself. Because sometimes the most meaningful and deep kinds of experiences come from not knowing.
The mystery, yeah.
Knowing, right? And so that's sort of my general advice in saying don't force it, is to also allow things that you don't know to come through.
That's true. When one forces things, they never work. Yeah. They really don't. But what you were saying about the mysterious or the unnamed or the non-categorized, my mom is an artist, and for years she wouldn't put titles on her pieces. She refused because she said it would, and she's right, that it would focus the viewers' expectations on the piece, and they would see it in a certain way, and she didn't want that. So it was interesting. Yeah. So the unfathomable becomes or stays that way, instead of just, you put a stamp on something and say, okay, this is about that, so we'll move on now. So
it closes the conversation a bit.
Yeah, I think so. Or at least it constricts it, if nothing else.
Yeah.
Thank you for listening to For Good Measures Da Capo Conversations, and a special thank you to our guests for joining us today. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to our podcast by clicking on the subscribe button, and support us by sharing it with your friends, posting about it on social media, and leaving us a rating and a review. To learn more about E4TT, our concert season online and in the Bay Area, or to make a tax-deductible donation, please visit us at www.e4tt.org. This podcast is made possible by grants from the California Arts Council, the San Francisco Arts Commission, Grants for the Arts, and generous donors like you. For Good Measures produced by Nanette McGuinness and Ensemble for These Times, and designed by Brennan Stokes, with special thanks to co-producer and audio engineer Stephanie M. Neumann. Remember to keep supporting equity in the arts, and tune in next week for Good Measure.